We're told now, because the media basically regurgitates what's leaked to them by the prosecutor's office. The issue isn't collusion. The issue is conspiracy. So after all this time, it's not collusion, it's conspiracy. And all the former prosecutors who are now professors or adjunct professors or work on Wall Street or wherever they are, yeah, it can be a conspiracy to, affect the outcome of an election. Oh. And then I read during the break from ABC News, because the leaks are coming fast and furiously, that the reason the president tweeted this morning is because Mueller and his gang are pressing the point of obstruction. And they want to question the president about obstruction. And so the president tweeted out earlier this morning, this is a terrible situation. And Attorney General Jeff Sessions should stop this rigged witch hunt right now before it continues to stain our country any further. Bob Mueller is totally conflicted, and his 17 angry Democrats that are doing his dirty work are a disgrace to the United States. He went on. Actually, earlier, FBI agent Peter Strzok on the Mueller team should have recused himself on day one. He was out to stop the election of Donald Trump. He needed an insurance policy. Those are illegal, improper goals trying to influence the election. He should never, ever have been allowed to remain in the FBI while he himself was being investigated. This is a real issue. It won't go into a Mueller report because Mueller is going to protect these guys. Mueller has an interest in creating the illusion of objectivity around his investigation. That is a quote from Alan Dershowitz. I think this is all accurate, and people are out there saying this is obstruction. What is obstruction? Obstruction when a president openly suggests that his attorney general should stop what's going on. He hasn't fired his attorney general. He hasn't ordered his attorney general. He's publicly made a statement. That's now obstruction. When the president of the United States tweets a statement about what he thinks his attorney general should do, where he has the power to fire his attorney general if he wants, that's obstruction? Do people understand what obstruction is? The President of the United States is both a citizen and the President of the United States. And acting as President of the United States, he oversees this vast executive branch. And what's happening here is that the Democrats and the media, some Republicans, want to make the case that the President is not free to control the executive branch because they want more and more of the government to be unmoored from a president, unless, of course, it's a president they like. Now, I pointed out Monday in the first hour, second segment, that Jeff Sessions should step up and do something about what's going on from a constitutional perspective. He hasn't recused himself entirely as Attorney General, hasn't recused himself from making judgment calls for the Department of Justice when it comes to the Constitution, whatever the investigative matter. He's sitting back. And notice he's not attacked by the left. He's not attacked by the media. They are perfectly happy with him being in the closet. But the biggest thing going on in this country right now, as applies to the president, is the fact that there is a rogue prosecutor on the loose. Even the judge in the Eastern District of Virginia, he's having to tell him, stop bringing up extraneous stuff. It doesn't matter how rich he is. It doesn't matter what kind of suits he has. You want to introduce pictures of his suits and an invoice of what he purchased? What does that have to do with bank fraud or tax fraud or conspiracy? You got a case? Make your case. The President of the United States, I just hope his lawyers follow what I say. It's no fun. It's going to involve significant litigation, and who knows what the outcome is with the Supreme Court. But the fact is The Constitution and the law and the prior positions of the Department of Justice are on the president's side. Now, look, I just told you what Iran's doing, right? I just told you what Iran's doing. You know what North Korea's doing. You know what China's doing and Russia's doing. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. This is why those 2 memos were written at the Department of Justice saying, you can't bog a president down in this stuff. Particularly in this case, ladies and gentlemen, when there is no real crime that they're trying to pin on the president. They're trying to concoct a crime to pin on the president. The old favorite, false statements. The old favorite, conspiracy. The old favorite, obstruction. It's preposterous. And from our perspective, whether or not you're a Trump supporter, these are constitutional questions. They do damage to the Constitution. Of course the statist progressives don't care. They don't care about the Constitution unless they can use it to defend themselves or advance their agenda. Then they like it. Otherwise, they could care less. You have a man, his people, his candidacy was spied on. And Mueller's blind to it. And Rosenstein's blind to it. And Sessions took a pass. We know for a fact this campaign was spied on. They even had an informant, and Trey Gowdy thinks that's all swell. An informant on a political campaign, an FBI informant. A FISA court warrant on an individual who had worked in the campaign based on a dossier paid for by the opposition campaign. And the entire focus is on the president to try and create an obstruction scenario? Nah, no questions, no answers. We'll see you in court. That should be the answer. I'll be right back. I think what's not being realized also in the commentariat on the left or the right is there's over 60 million people who voted for Donald Trump to be president of the United States. Over 60 million people. And the elites and the establishment are trying to reverse their votes, the outcome of the election. And many people are not just going to sit quietly. I'm not talking about going in the streets with arms. I'm not talking about that. So it's not just an intellectual debate. It's not just Rodney King, can we all get along? That's the problem. You have a certain group of people in this country trying to undo what over 60 million people in this country did, legitimately, honestly, at the ballot box. And that's a big problem. And I don't think people are really thinking this through. People who are saying things like, well, let the investigation take its course. Well, we're going to impeach him if we take the House. Well, let's be civil with each other. Well, you know, a coup is a very, very dangerous thing. And that's how I view it. It's a coup. I'm the one who started talking about it that way. The others have picked it up. And I love it when it's quoted back to me, by the way. Jeff, Waco, Texas. I don't have the call letters up there, Mr. Call Screener. How are you listening to us?
I'm just on my phone. I was listening on the radio. WDAP 820.
Wonderful. Thank you. Go right ahead.
Yes, sir. Just a pretty simple comment. Listening to the outcry about President Trump tweeting and that being somehow obstruction. I don't recall hearing anything like that when then President Obama made a comment basically exonerating Hillary while that investigation was going on, and I just don't understand how to square that.
You know, that's a great point. That is a great point, and I hadn't thought of that. You're right. So when Obama telegraphs that Hillary didn't do anything wrong, we didn't get all these phony professors and phony former prosecutors on TV and in print media telling us that's obstruction of justice. That's a great point, Jeff. I'll tell you what, how old are you?
I'm 37.
Don't hang up. I want to send you a copy of Plunder and Deceit. That was a very good call. Don't hang up. Certainly was better than the prior one. Let us go to Robert, Wichita, Kansas, XM Satellite. Yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Hi, Mark. I love the show.
Thank you.
Curious as to why the statute of limitations on the Mueller case doesn't apply, since it started in 2005.
Well, that's a pretty good question, isn't it? I'm not sure that they're charging him with crimes that occurred outside the statute of limitations, or I'm sure the lawyer would have raised that or their lawyers would have raised it by now. It is probably viewed as a continuing violation. That is, one tax return on top of the next, on top of the next, on top of the next, something of that sort.
Okay.
All right.
Anybody would know, you would. I appreciate it.
Well, I suspect that's what it is. Otherwise, they'd be knocked out. All right, my friend. I appreciate your call. Tim, Vero Beach, Florida, on the Mark Levin app. Go.
Boy, great to speak to you.
Thank you.
I hope you can go 30 years like Maharishi as well.
Well, I'm going to tell you I'm not, because I have 15 years in, and I plan to retire when I'm about 70, so that's less than 30. Anyway, go right ahead.
Good for you. Listen, what would happen if Donald Trump and the RNC was caught, red-handed, laundering $85 million of campaign funds?
Be more specific. What are we talking about?
Well, isn't that what Hillary Clinton and the DNC did? There's a big story recently.
Are they not allowed to share funds? I'm no expert on this.
Well, what I understand, the funds, it was to avoid the limits. So they were donating.
Yeah, but it's my understanding that that was not illegal. That's considered a gray area. But to answer your question, under Robert Mueller, there are no gray areas. So you're right. He'd come with guns a-blazing. But it's my understanding that's a gray area.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Is it your understanding that it's not?
No, I'm just saying that it could be. But if it was Trump, it wouldn't be gray.
Yeah, he'd be guilty as accused, All right, my friend, I appreciate your call. We'll be right back.